Welcome to the NewlandRock Leadership Effectiveness podcast, hosted by me, Kate Thomas. This podcast is packed with practical tips and expert views to unlock the leadership effectiveness in you and your organisation. My name is Kate Thomas, and I'm a leadership effectiveness expert and the founder of NewlandRock, a consultancy dedicated to focusing on increasing leadership effectiveness for talent-savvy companies and individuals. In this podcast, I will share my experience of supercharging leadership performance and business results with you. Join me and the best thought leaders for topical discussions and talent-centric insights. Joining me today for the launch episode is Hayley, a career coach with exceptional credentials. Hayley specialises in helping individuals who are at that crunch point in their career. When you've seen the headlines, the different feeds that are showing up on social media, what is it about the Great Resignation that has got your attention?
Well, I suppose it's coming back to that question, or that topic rather, around change. So there's been, and just looking at the period of the pandemic, there's been so much overwork, so much stress, increased demand in many of these areas, and just all leading to burnout. I mean, we're seeing it everywhere, aren't we? And then when you add into that the sort of possibilities and opportunities around remote work, having more time with the family, having perhaps a better balance, people getting a taste for this, it's not surprising that there's this big storm out there in the media around the Great Resignation. So
I think that's a really good way of framing it. It's a storm. It's in some respects that what's been going on for us in the last 18 months has served as a catalyst for people to really stop and think about what it is that they want for themselves. And maybe in some ways, there is so much now going on around how you can work, what it is that you need. There's a bit of stimulation burnout as well as physical burnout in terms of the delivery of the work that we're doing as leaders, but there's a sensory burnout because there's just so much coming at us right now. So that storm, that perfect storm, that story that you're referring to when you said this is about change and burnout, I can see why the topic at least has really gained momentum over the last few months.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sort of building on that, we're sort of coming from a place of this overwork, this burnout that we're talking about, but that was there already, and then you add a global pandemic to that, with the increased pressures, uncertainty, and change that's brought, and then you throw in there, well, look, we could work in this way. You could actually have these things as well if you like. It's just building and building, and I think that for me, on my sort of personal, I don't know how much I'm just trying to see this in a positive way, but I think there's just a real hope for change, a hope for positive change. So let's not continue just working ourselves into the ground. Let's take this opportunity, as you said, Kate, to stop, pause, and reflect, and think about what's really important to me in my life, my work, and what needs to change.
As you said in one of our first conversations, leadership effectiveness is about crafting a career that leads you to what's possible. And so if we take that statement and then think from a practical standpoint, you're coaching a leader who's contemplating a new role during this time, so during the Great Resignation time, what would be some tips or some questions that you'd look for the leader to contemplate at this early stage of inquiry?
I think it's probably important to just differentiate. are different types of change. There are different needs and wants. So that you might have somebody who just sees an opportunity to do this job, this role in a slightly different way or in a different company, and is just going to take this opportunity to change things up. Perhaps a company with a bit more remote working, who've evolved that a bit better. The reasons are sort of endless, but we're talking there about something that's a relatively small change. And I think that the things that get in the way of and what you want to be thinking about for something like that is, I suppose, just really taking it as an opportunity to properly reflect and slow down, and do a bit of a view across your life and work, and reflect on what drives you, what are your values. There's various pieces that you can look at, your strengths, and then this big piece around kind of purpose and meaning. Then you're now thinking of perhaps getting something different in a different company, a different boss, a different remote working arrangement. Everything suddenly is changed. So what comes with that, as we think about it, is this turbulence of emotional experience, actually, and usually lots of fear, whether we want to admit that or not. There's a lot of uncomfortableness with, what could I really do next? Is really slow down and take the opportunity to do a sort of proper stock take, if you like. Look into your past. What have you done? What skills have you accumulated? But which of those skills do you actually like using? What strengths do you have? What knowledge have you got? What motivates you? Perhaps, there's some really great psychometric assessments you could do, that I would always work with clients on, and then look at how that applies in your present situation. So what are you now doing, and what are you using, and what strengths are you bringing?
There's so much in what you just said there, Hayley, and I was taking some notes because there were some powerful points. That piece around that turbulence, the emotional experience, the fear that can be inside us when we're considering something new. And for me, where my mind went when you were talking about that is, my goodness, we're not even through the pandemic, so we're already facing fear. We're already in a survival mode. I think for me, what's coming up is, let's be very clear on what the opportunity of moving on can bring. I think that's what you're saying. Let's recognize that this is a big change. We're already going through a big change. And if we're considering taking on something new, especially at a leadership level, that movement in itself brings a lot of unsettlement in us. At the same time, it brings a lot of opportunity if you do the work and understand what it is that's missing out of what it is that you're doing and what it is that you need. If you haven't done the work, then we've got a little bit of a jump ship, fingers crossed, grass is greener kind of mentality, which we both know leads to thinking, well, what's next after just a few months of being in the new job, right? So
yes, absolutely.
That clarity on why it is that I'm actually thinking about this. And I think also there's also a bit of a reality check on, the pandemic has brought up a lot of emotions in us. And what was important to us as individuals, especially as leaders, has possibly changed because of the experience that we've had over the last 18 months. And I think it's what you're saying is around being aware of that, and again, doing the work to understand, do that stock take, as you say, to figure out, well, what's the purpose and the meanings for me now?
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree more, Kate. I think you're exactly right. And I think, I think a lot of people are going around at the moment and sort of almost acting as if things are normal, whereas actually we're still going through a pandemic, which, as you rightly point out has created this collective grief. You know, we're all, I don't believe that there's anyone out there who's not suffering in some way from the loss and the fear that has just become almost normal for us. So I think, and when you were just talking then, I was just thinking how we've really got to just be kind to ourselves and acknowledge it's okay that this is feeling big and difficult to be, as you say, changing role, changing career. That's big enough, but to do it during a time of such grief and fear is big. So
yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, so it's really worth acknowledging that, and then going deep and asking yourselves those big questions, as you say. So what's changed for me now? We're not where we were. What's important now?
And maybe as you're talking, what's coming up for me are the watch outs, the blind spots that can be going on for leaders who are thinking about moving elsewhere. Is there, adding on to that, what would you see being, or what you experience, blind spots and watch outs that when someone is thinking about their new role, what shows up? What do you tend to need to guide them on?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that by far the biggest thing that comes up is just this, oh no, I couldn't do that. No, I couldn't do that. I couldn't stretch into that. It is this sort of inner critic voice, and that blocks us. Because, you know, really changing job, changing career, it's just like anything in life. It's literally actually just a set of things that you have to do. You know, in quotes, all you have to do is look at what you've got to offer, look at what it is that you want, find that thing, and then get it. And that is all totally possible. That's just the kind of stuff that you have to do. But what we know well is that it's not emotionally easy to go through that. So definitely I would watch out for, you know, which part of yourself is speaking and is representing you as you're thinking about this. Is it a helpful part, which is feeling confident, positive, optimistic? Are you coming from that place as you are thinking about the various pieces in the puzzle as you go along? Or are you coming from more of a, oh, I don't know if I could, I don't know if I should do that, or I might fail if I push into that. But you know, the things that get in the way are not really the how to. It's the oh, but could I?
I love that. Who's talking now? I love that thought. Yeah. Taking some internal reflection, and which part of me is talking here? Is my achievement motive in overdrive, or am I playing true to the values and what it is that I think are important to me now? Am I feeling blocked because I'm fearing this, because there's judgment and being critical? Or is this going to really fulfill me, and it's my opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely.
We get in our way, I think, is what I'm hearing, Hayley. The blind us.
Well, you've just summarized it perfectly, and I think you also touched on something as a sort of antidote to that, which, you know, we work with in coaching, which is, you know, when you observe that perhaps a part of yourself that is not particularly useful is in charge, and you know that because you start to feel what we might call anxious, you feel it in your body, you feel yourself closing down, you feel you start to hunch over, or, you know, sort of close off from thinking about it. And actually, you know, there are key things that we can do, that we can come back to sort of wake ourselves out of that mode. And one is looking at at your values, if you can do some personal reflection on what your values are, and then almost be led by them in this process, in what you're looking for and in how you're doing that. And another just key tip that I would give as a sort of antidote is there's so much power in how we use our body. You know, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about ends up in our heads. Of course it does, because we have to think about it, and we have to cogitate, and we have to plan, and that's all great stuff, you know, but where we get stuck is often in our body. So, and always what I find is that when we go into a sort of negative thought pattern and a sabotaging way of thinking, usually we've crunched down, hunched over, and we can't breathe. You know, that oxygen's not getting to our brain. So literally the best thing to do is to just sit up straight and allow yourself some deep breaths, perhaps walk around, get your body moving, and then come back to the thinking.
Wow. So as you were talking, I was leaning forward and I wasn't sitting up straight, and I instantly moved. I took a deep breath, and just such a simple thing. You are more focused, but in the right way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm also curious to get your perspective, because I know you don't consult exclusively to individuals looking to shift their career, that you also consult to organizations on these topics. So what do you think the opportunity is for organizations who are dealing with right now the Great Resignation, on top of the fact that they have just had to firefight through 18 months of the crotch of the pandemic? What would you say to them, and how they are managing leadership effectiveness during this period of time?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Kate. I mean, the opportunity is enormous, I think. And I think part of the problem is that opportunity has been there for a long time and perhaps not embraced. And now we've had a pandemic and everything that's brought, and all of the burnout and overwork that they're working with now. On top of that is they're kind of on the back foot, I think. Not all organizations, some are doing this well. And so really, it's about turning towards your people and recognizing that your business is your people. And when they, just as you described it, this obviously with this storm around the Great Resignation, there's a lot of fear and panic that good talent is going to be walking out of the door. And so let's really take this as an opportunity to get things right and to start to shift. So I think places to look are around, I think a real differentiator is around career development. So really thinking about how you are developing your staff, and the effort and thought that you're putting into that is a bit of a secret weapon, really. Candidates out there and employees within the organization will be weighing up different opportunities at different companies. Obviously money's important, but behind that, very quickly, very close, is opportunities for personal development, for career development. So what offerings have you got? What leadership development are you doing? How effective is it? Personal wellness, what skills and training are you offering that can align with individuals' goals and aspirations? And how well do you know about where those individuals are and how they are? Which then brings me on to, I think, the other piece, which is really key, which again has been there anyway and now is becoming even more important, which is just management and leadership, management style, the role of the manager. You look at now, managers perhaps not looking after people, people's well-being, burnout, and career development. That was all challenging. Like, it's not easy. Looking after people, managing people is not easy. And perhaps not enough care and attention has gone into that over recent years. and then you throw this pandemic in, which has led to a lot the virtual working that we now have, and now hybrid working. So how does the role of that manager need to evolve now to be able to not, because this virtual working that we're getting so used to now becomes very transactional and is very much about output and performance, when actually people are burnt out and we're all going through this collective grief. So what do managers now need even more of to be able to keep their staff motivated, listened to? So skill sets of those managers need to be rethought. So I think that's a really key point, and sort of related to that is just the culture, the working culture. I mean, there's a real chance now to throw everything up in the air and rethink what that needs to feel like in these times of increased change.
I think for me, what I'm also sensing in the communities that I work in is that a lot of great HR practitioners have been talking about what we're talking about for a long time. But the consequences of the pandemic and then this conversation of the Great Resignation is emphasizing the importance of what's already on the agenda within HR departments, and it's helping elevate that conversation into a board setting where it's no longer just a nice to have, good to do type activities. This is actually fundamental stuff around an organization being successful and surviving and gaining out of these times. So everything that you're touching on really helps play to the importance of a HR agenda and getting change actually happening and embedded and systemic into businesses. So it certainly feels like, as you've said throughout our conversation, there is some good that can come from this.
Yes, I couldn't agree more, Kate. I think that that's absolutely right, and I think we have to see it that way. There is real opportunity here to evolve, as you say, working practices and putting people at the top of the agenda, like we, as you say, like we've needed to do for so long. And we know that empowering your people, looking after your people, has a direct impact on the bottom line. So it's a bit of a no-brainer, and it is actually quite exciting to think that there is this opportunity now for change. Absolutely.
Hayley, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed all of the advice that you've shared, and you've given us so many tips that anybody listening on here can go away and reflect on for themselves if they are feeling a little bit confused by this topic of the Great Resignation, all right, and maybe a little bit influenced that they need to be part of it. And if they are feeling that they want to move and take their career elsewhere, the tips that you've given around being able to just take stock and pause, I think are going to really help a number of leaders that we're connected with. So I just wanted to thank you for being so gracious with your time and giving us so much. Thank you.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure, Kate. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the NewlandRock Leadership Effectiveness podcast with me, your host, Kate Thomas. If you would like more information on how I can help you or your organization maximize your talent and leadership effectiveness strategies, then reach out to me through my website, NewlandRock.com.